Welcome to another episode of Locked On Bulls. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We'll be talking about the Bulls free agency moves so far. We'll also be asking why hasn't the front office done more in this offseason? And then we ask, is what the Bulls did enough to keep up in a competitive Eastern Conference with a lot of teams getting better? We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. That's Pat, the designer, host, and creator of the Windy City Breeze. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central, and we're jumping right in. Pat, the Bulls have seemingly finished their free agency already, which is a little bit concerning. But so we've re-signed Zach LaVine, as we've talked about. We dropped an emergency episode for that. We signed Andre Drummond. One thing that we haven't talked about yet on the show is that we re-upped Derrick Jones Jr., which was kind of an unexpected move after the Danilo Gallinari deal fell through, for another 2 years, $6.6 million. Bro, I mean, where do you sit? And we'll break down like how this hurts the team or whatever, but just the deals themselves. The Zach deal had to get done. We knew that had to get done. Drummond deal, I think we're both fairly positive on the Drummond deal, but did you expect Derrick Jones Jr. to be returning to the Chicago Bulls?
I didn't expect Derrick Jones Jr. to be returning, but I'll say this: I didn't expect Derrick. Good Lord, I can't say his name. I haven't started drinking yet. I didn't expect Derrick Jones Jr. to be returning at 6.6 over 2 years either, right? So I think that's the thing about this free agency to me that makes the biggest difference. And honestly, Bulls fans, I want y'all to really look at the deals that the Bulls have gotten done. You've got a rebounder and Andre Drummond, who does he solve every issue for us on this team? No, but you got him at 2 years, pretty much same contract, right? Like 6.
No, they're the exact same contract, both with a player option in the second year. Same
perfect,
exact
right? And you're getting role pieces in here for $3 million, basically. Derrick Jones, kind of the same thing. Zach LaVine comes in at $215 million over 5 years. Just to put this into perspective on kind of what free agency has been, you've got two solid role players. I'll say role players, kind of like guys that are going to come in and just do their job at very affordable contracts. And you got Zach LaVine at a contract that's less than a dude in New Orleans that has played 85 games in 3 years.
Now, just putting that in perspective, that's
it has not been. I know there's a lot of people that are going to say like the Bulls haven't done enough, and I can get on board with that argument. But when you look at what the Bulls have done, we've talked about solidifying the bench. We've talked about fixing a couple of issues that they've had. I like both of the deals that they got because they're both very, very team-friendly deals based on the production that we know DJJ can give, even though it may not be an every game basis, and based on the production that we know that Andre Drummond will give you off of the bench.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Andre Drummond is going to give you nice production off the bench. And the way that I look at the Derrick Jones Jr. re-signing is that once the Danilo deal fell through, like, who else is out there? I look at like Caleb Martin as somebody that I'd be highly interested in, shooting the three at 41%, bigger size. DiVincenzo, but he can't play the three. Like, I'm looking at wings. I'm not looking at guards. DiVincenzo is a guard. So I mean, I would have
if Kobe's here, I guess.
If Kobe's here. Now, if Kobe was leaving, then DiVincenzo a lot more. But I look at Caleb Martin. I look at some of these other deals. Would I've liked the Bulls to take a look at maybe Caleb Martin before going back to DJJ? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I would. But I kind of understand the Derrick Jones Jr. deal. He's your own free agent, so you didn't have to go into the mid-level exception to use him, which means we still have $7 million worth of a mid-level exception to go after a player. And if they weren't completely sold on Caleb Martin, why use your mid-level exception to sign him when you can't just re-sign with bird rights with Derrick Jones Jr.? On top of that, it's only a $3 million deal. We've seen deals for twice as much as that move pretty easily. So that deal can move, right? It can be moved. If they need to add in some salary and a bigger deal later on or something like that, I don't see it being a problem, moving Derrick Jones Jr. He's already familiar with the system. Hopefully, Billy Donovan uses him a little bit better than what he did last season. Hopefully, a lot of these players. That's what I'm going to be focusing on the last segment today. I got a lot of things to talk about how Billy Donovan can use these players better and can maximize them, and we can see a lot of improvement that way. But looking at that overall, like, I understand the deal. Again, and that's something I like to say all the time. Understanding and agreeing are different. I don't agree with the way that the Chicago Bulls went about this offseason. Just being honest, I don't agree with it, but I understand
there were better options.
The methodology behind it, right? I understand it, especially when you talk about avoiding. We'll get into that in a second, in the second topic as well. But are there any free agents and deals that you look at that you see and you say to yourself, the Bulls could have been in on that, and I wish they were in on that?
I think the Mo Bamba deal is the one that you always kind of look back on because it's literally the MLE, right?
But then that would have hard capped us.
But it wouldn't have been. I put things in perspective of what would Mo Bamba be as a backup big. There's a lot of people that believe that he's coming here to take Vooch's job, maybe at some point, but probably not this season, right? I think that's the one, though, that you always kind of look back on. I think there's still some deals out there that can be made. I haven't seen too many deals that I was like, man, I wish the Bulls had gotten that done, because I also don't know right where the player was at on coming to the Chicago Bulls. Mo Bamba, at least we heard, wanted to be a Chicago Bull. But I can understand, again, understanding and agreeing are two different things. That's the one where I'd have said, I'd have spent the full mid-level exception on a Mo Bamba. He's 24 years old. At a minimum, he's giving me 10 and 8. 12 and 10 on a high shooting percentage. That's the one that I probably look back on and say, okay, I'd have done that because he's 24, and if he's going to keep getting better, those numbers just keep going up, and he fits with what the Bulls want to do. But
and
on
he
top
can play
of
next
that,
to Vooch and next to P. Will,
and he'd have been next to Vooch. He'd have been very, very versatile, big, somebody who really can, get the job done there. And now it puts a lot, but I'll say this, right? It's AK putting pressure on himself. You got to be right about these guys that you've brought in. You've got to be right about Patrick Williams. You've got to be right about Ayo Dosunmu. You got to be right about the rookies that you brought in this year, Dalen Terry and Justin Lewis. Guess what? They're going to have to pan out because you didn't want to go get a young 24-year-old player who's already in the right position. So, or at least moving forward. And you also have to think, right, like you're taking them off of the Magic and putting them on a winning team. That's also going to improve them a little bit as well. So I think that's probably the one deal that I would have looked at and been like, I'd have liked to see us get that one done. Outside of that, though, I still think there's a lot of moves that the Bulls could go after. I kind of want to know, where's Dennis Schroeder going because of the question marks around Alonzo Ball. I haven't seen or heard good or bad one way or the other. Like the last update we had on Lonzo Ball was like, he has a basketball in his hand. He's not quite Anthony Davis. That don't do much for me, right? Like, is he going to be ready by the beginning of the season? That's the biggest question mark there. And so I'd like to see the Bulls maybe shore up the guard position a little bit more. And I'll say this, right? Like, we haven't seen them even outside of free agency, right? Just in trades and things like that, it seemed like a foregone conclusion based on the fact that they were actively shopping Kobe as well, that Kobe White was gone. Could Kobe White still being here lead to some question marks even more on Lonzo Ball's issue?
No, I don't think that has anything to do with Lonzo Ball's issue. The one thing that I will want to say to go back to the question is that Isaiah Hartenstein, I think that Isaiah Hartenstein deal, $8 million over $8 million per 2-year deal, $16 million deal. I think that the Bulls probably would have did that deal had they known they were going to miss out on Gallinari. Because at that point, if you were going to have to re-sign Derrick Jones Jr. with bird rights rather than the MLE, you could have signed Hartenstein, not hard capped yourself, and used less than the full mid-level exception. And you could have had a nice young center in here who could possibly also take over for Vooch if need be. Now,
agreed. But again, the question mark, does he want to be here?
That's the biggest question of every free agent. Like, we can talk all day about who we thought, but that's the one question that we never knew. Would they have been interested? Now, I can use some things just looking around it, like he's gonna be coming off the bench in New York, which is way further away than we are. Yeah. So it's like when that deal initially went down, me and you both were like, okay, so they're probably not re-signing Mitch. Then they went out and got Mitch
60 mil.
for 60 mil. So he's clearly going to be the backup there. So I would. if he wanted to come to Chicago, if all things even, if Chicago was also an option for him that was viable for him, I think he would have took that Chicago deal if it was offered to him.
Now, here's the question that I have, right? What's the limit on the mid-level exception? Like, can it only be used for signings? Can you use it also if you acquire somebody during the season, or can
Only
you
signings.
only
Only
signings?
signings,
Okay,
yeah.
so then yeah, you might as well have used it in the free agency pool, I guess, because I was gonna say if there's something like I feel like AK is also the guy that's like, so who's a disgruntled superstar that wants to get out of their team in the middle of the season
Well,
that we could
that's why I
possibly
think
make
that
a
they
move for?
didn't want to hard cap themselves, because if a disgruntled superstar does become available
Yeah,
and you hard cap yourself,
you
then it
can't go
makes it
get 'em.
extremely hard to go get them. I mean, it's still possible, but it makes it a
You
lot
gotta
harder.
you gotta work. Listen,
Yeah.
Phoenix is working right now
Well,
trying to
Phoenix
make these
issue
numbers
isn't just
work.
hard cap either. It's the mix of hard cap and their biggest trade chip is a restricted free agent, and then you only
Yeah,
have the half of the base compensation. So,
yeah.
but we're gonna go ahead and get into the next topic, which we're gonna be talking about. Why hasn't the front office done more? We've touched on it a little bit, but first, before we get into that, got to talk to you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all your latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sport wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcast news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf, which that UFC was fire last night, by the way. Head
Man,
to the
he was
website
giving them
today.
that work.
Man, head to the website today to use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, Pat. So the question that's on a lot of Bulls fans' minds, especially ones that, and I don't say this to be derogatory or anything, the ones that really don't understand the cap maneuvering, right? There's a lot of maneuvering with the cap that happens, and as I've said before, the salary cap, the CBA is all extremely difficult. It's like learning another language. So I understand that. So hopefully we can clear up some of those things for the people here, while also airing out some grievances, because I'm sure me and you both do have some. So the question of the second segment today is, why hasn't the front office, AK, Eversley, and ownership, I think we got to throw in a little bit in this as well, done more in this offseason?
I think the easy thing to go to is that, like, the Bulls are cheap, right? The Bulls don't want to pay. And listen, it makes it hard to defend them with the deals that they've struck here. Like, there's some cheap deals out here, brother.
Yeah.
Like, but let me get on my Brian Windhorse real quick, right? Here's the question you got to ask yourself, right? When you look at what AK has been doing, why was he looking at the ceiling that entire time? I was trying to figure that out. That's the one thing.
I had a teacher in high school that looked up the whole time, because he was like, when he had to think, he had to naturally look up. Maybe that's Brian Windhorse thing. Like, he has to look up to gather his thoughts.
Hey, he was asking God to send them words down. That was majestic. That was
pulling
majestic.
on the strength of the Lord to give us this sports information. Yeah.
But no, here's the thing that I do have, where I don't want to say it's cutting AK and them some slack, because I think there's moves that could have been made and there's moves that could have been done, right? But we're looking at what the Bulls needed based on what we saw last season.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw last season was an incomplete Bulls team for just about 3/4 of the season. Whether you think Patrick Williams is actually going to fit in somewhere, something like that, that's a difference maker. But at a minimum, Lonzo, Zach, DeMar, we saw that 35 game, if that, maybe like less. And I think, and Vooch.
Mm-hmm.
And so here's the thing that I will ask Bulls fans, and to you, of course, but is this a situation where our evaluation of what the Bulls need could literally just be a healthy Bulls team? And what I mean by that, no matter what happened last year, we needed to be bigger. No matter if the Bulls stayed healthy or not, we needed to be bigger off of the bench. We had no rebounding off of the bench. We had nobody to help Vooch. That needed to happen no matter what. But our other issue was shooting and the ability to get out on the fast break.
Mm-hmm.
Lonzo Ball solves two of those problems if he's healthy.
This is very true.
Ayo Dosunmu improving could solve another one of those problems. I don't know if Kobe White solves a problem there, but they seemed very understanding in the press conferences when they introduced Dalen Terry of what Kobe went through. So maybe they think that. I would disagree on that one, but maybe they believe that Kobe White in a more stable situation is a different player. Zach LaVine being healthy helps you with your shooting. DeMar DeRozan's a mid-range assassin. DJJ kind of the corner three. But could it simply be that they're like, we've got what we need on this team minus size. It just needs to be healthy enough to put that product on the court.
I mean, the thing that I'm looking at, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, right? And a lot of it is I think they're betting on health. Two of your five starters played less than 50 games combined, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Zach hobbled most of the season. Caruso missed a big chunk of the season being hurt as well. Io was a rookie. You expect him to take a leap. So looking at all those things, right? I'm looking at the front office probably said, hey, we're going to take a little bit of a step up if two out of those three things go away, right? Health, somebody taking a leap, something like that.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you did add the rebounding and somewhat shot blocking that you needed off the bench with having a big off the bench. So I can understand why they think that they've done enough to at least make some improvements, right? Bench scoring is still going to be a horrendous thing unless Io really turns into a scorer, because we were bottom of the league in bench scoring. That hurt us a lot.
But a lot of our bench was in the starting lineup. Io DeSumo's points don't go towards the bench.
True.
Kobe White's points don't really go towards the bench.
I mean, okay. I mean, I get what you're saying with that.
You know what I'm saying? When you're relying on TBJ, DJJ, and Tony Bradley to be your bench scoring, like, you're in a little bit of trouble.
I mean, yeah, this is true. This is true. And I mean, like I said, and the Bulls have tried to move Kobe, but to your point, I mean, it's come out today even more that they have not found a deal to their liking, and they are willing, because it's not like, and that's the thing with Bulls fans, right? We tend to act like people are just horrible. Was Kobe wildly inconsistent? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he wasn't. There were 20 players in the league who got a bunch of minutes that were worse than Kobe White last season.
Hey,
if not more.
The main one is the one the Bulls want to trade, or Bulls fans want Kobe traded for, in Taylor Horton Tucker.
Oh God. So there were a lot of that. So, like, I get it. Keep in mind, throughout half the season, Kobe White averaged 16 points per game on 40% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from three. If he can give you that consistently, that's exactly what you need off the bench.
Yeah.
So I can understand AK Eversley thinking, hey, we got some tweaks to do, and then we can possibly go further. But let's not act like some part of this is not because of ownership wanting to avoid the luxury tax. But with that being said, again, understanding and agreeing being different things, I can understand to a degree wanting to avoid the luxury, because you can only avoid it for so much long. Guess what? Io's extension is right around the corner.
Yeah.
Patrick Williams' extension is the year after that. Yeah. If Kobe ends up playing well and the Bulls do decide to go ahead and extend him, that's next year as well.
Yeah.
So the luxury tax is inevitable at this point. It's just trying to position yourself that when you get there, you are in the best situation possible. Because, listen, it's harder for a team, as much as a team trying to avoid the luxury tax. It's harder when most of your players on your team were either free agent signings or trade. We only have three players now on this team that were drafted by the Chicago Bulls. Do you know who those three players are off the top of your head, Pat?
P. Will, Io, Kobe.
Yep. Oh, and now Dalen Terry. So 4. I'm sorry.
Well, 5 technically. Well, no, Justin's
was signing
undrafted. Yeah. So 4.
So when you have that, and those players aren't anywhere in the top 4 players of your team, it's hard to avoid the luxury tax at that point. So,
well, and I think the main thing to think about, right, is it's like we said when we were talking about the luxury tax last time. Mm-hmm. You go into the luxury tax for players worth going into the luxury tax for. Zach LaVine is that player.
Yeah.
But we're still below it. Hopefully, Io DeSumo becomes that player. Hopefully, Patrick Williams becomes that player. But was there a player in this offseason that it was worth going into the luxury tax for, that made you, right? Because when you're going into the luxury tax, you're now saying we are going for a championship, no matter what. We're willing to pay extra money on top of this to go get a championship. Was there a player out there, not to say the Bulls aren't going for a championship, but was there a player out there that you felt if they play on the Chicago Bulls this season, you're contending for a championship?
No. And that's the thing that I've been saying for the long.
Yeah.
There was not a single player out there that, whether you want to talk about using the full mid-level exception, even in trading for Rudy Gobert, they don't make the Bulls a championship contender.
Gets you closer.
It gets you closer. Yes,
I'll
it gets you closer.
say that, right? That's a move that if they went into the luxury tax for Rudy, I'd have been like, you're closer.
See, but that's where we disagree when we had that episode. Go back and listen to that episode. We're not going to do it again because we did that already. We did our PTI on that. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, like I said, do I agree with everything the front office not doing more? No. But being logical and looking at the totality of it, and if I was an owner, if you're going to be spending my money, guess what? I'm going to be a little bit more frugal on it than me sitting here as a podcaster saying, hey, yeah, let's go into the luxury tax.
Well, I think if I'm an owner and you're gonna spend my money on it, I'm gonna just say, okay, like, listen, they made the call. Okay, can we get Kevin Durant here? Yeah, I'll pay the extra money. You know what I mean? Like that. Those are the kind of moves that smart organizations make. You call on the best players in the world in NBA history. You know what I'm saying? You made that. What can we do to get nothing? All right, I'll talk to you later.
And that's the type of conversation. If AK calls Jerry Reinsdorf, I guarantee you right now and says, Jerry, there's a deal in which we can get KD in here without giving up Lonzo, Zach, or DeMar, but the luxury tax bill is going to be about $5 million extra over the luxury tax. I guarantee you, Jerry Reinsdorf is going to be like, all right, go get it done.
I don't know about Jerry. Michael, maybe.
Michael. Jerry. Listen.
Jerry's gonna hit you with.
Jerry's gonna be like, okay, what's again? Remind me what that finals revenue is going to bring us in, even if we lose the finals. What's that finals revenue going to be? Oh, an extra $30 million just for making the. Oh yeah, go ahead and do it. Go ahead.
I don't know about Jerry. Jerry, what do you want me to do?
Michael, what do you think?
What's Michael got going on down there? I heard it's like the hotel room in the 80s.
That's so funny, bro. But go ahead.
Hey, man. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and showing us love, man. Before we get into this final topic, we do want to tell you that this episode is also brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or even seemingly intimidating questions like, is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And wait while the person behind the counter click-clacks on their keyboard, choosing only the brand that their warehouse happens to carry because they got them in their pocket. When you have computers with rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. Here's the thing. You're saving time and you're saving money when you're using rockauto.com. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership when you can go to rockauto.com? They've got reliably low prices for every single customer. They have everything that you could need. Brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. So go to their easy-to-use website to find solutions for your auto part needs right now. Go to rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, locked on in there. How'd you hear about us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selections, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need at rockauto.com.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, Pat, last topic of the day. We got to talk about it. So we already identified what the front office is looking at for the Bulls to take a big leap. The health, improvement, things like that. Here's the thing that I want to ask you. Do you think we're going to get any of that? Do you think that's going to be enough? Do you think that's going to satisfy the fans? Do you think it's going to be enough for us to take a leap? Me personally, one of the things that I alluded to earlier, I think that it really boils down to Billy Donovan has to use the players that are on this roster a little bit better. You look at Patrick Williams being having only a 14% usage rate, and the two games in which his usage rate were considerably higher, he was very effective, even in the playoffs. His usage rate in the playoffs was 16%. Playing through Patrick Williams a little bit more helps him. Having him be that shooter out there in the corner does not. His shot's too slow for that. What we're seeing and what I'm learning about Patrick Williams is that he can play that point forward role and be very good in that, and he's more effective, and it forces him to be a little bit more aggressive because he has the ball in his hands. Lonzo Ball, forced to be a perimeter shooter for most of the season. Again, once we saw him unlocked a little bit more, 18, 8, and 6 is what he averaged. Yeah. So I think that it's going to be improvements, and Billy Donovan, I think, is going to look at it. His offensive scheme changes season to season a little bit each time, but I do think, like, on top of the health, everything else, Billy Donovan is going to have to find a way to unlock things a little bit in these players better offensively, but it's also going to take some growth from those players as well, and they're going to have to earn that themselves by the way that they play. What do you think?
I think the only pushback I would give you, right, is Billy Donovan hasn't had the opportunity to do that, right? With Patrick Williams, You got to be on the court. Got to be healthy. And I think that will come this season. Hopefully, he's worked on his body. He's been out there working with DeMar. He looks great. By the way, I don't know if y'all saw the pictures of him practicing.
Like a physical beast. Anybody who's still saying Patrick Williams is not a power forward, I think you got to take that back. That man is.
Y'all got to at least look at power forwards.
You got to run. You got to run that back. There are a lot of power forwards in this league that are considerably smaller than Patrick Williams right now. That man. Hey, listen. DeMar was feeding him some stuff. Whatever he was eating down in Cali.
What's the new version of Wheaties? What is that? What is that for athletes now? Like,
I don't even know.
Nobody's eating Wheaties by choice anymore. I mean, like but again, right? Like Patrick Williams got to be there. Zach LaVine's got to be on the floor for him to be schemed in and healthy for him to be schemed in, right? I think Lonzo, we got a little bit more of a sample of. But even with that, right, there's only one basketball. Who do you want taking the shots? Lonzo Ball, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Out of the two there. Now, I will say I would like to have seen Lonzo facilitate a lot more in fourth quarters. And I think me and you have both kind of talked about that, where we didn't see that enough, right? Like Lonzo Ball would essentially just become a shooter at times. But when I look at, changing scheme around players, Billy Donovan didn't have that opportunity last year because none of the players were there. Caruso wasn't there. Io was there. He was the one of the few that was there. Kobe missed time. P. Will missed time. Zach missed time. And so, right, like you're always constantly adjusting. I do think there's certain players that he could do more with, including Patrick Williams. And I think the end of last season I think we might be in for a little bit of a Pat Mahomes type jump in Patrick Williams' usage here. What I mean by that is when they saw Pat Mahomes in the last game of the season, they knew pretty much going into the playoffs at that point that they were trading Alex Smith the next year. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, he could slang that thing. All right, we're gonna get him in there. I think seeing P. Will kind of be more aggressive at the end of the season and going into the playoffs, what he was able to do versus Giannis and those guys. You're going to see more of that out of P. Will. But again, the biggest thing that I think the Bulls need to improve upon that's going to help them next season is just being there. And I don't know what that's going to take. Listen, call somebody from Golden State's medical staff, because Otto Porter played a full season out here. Yeah, I mean, like, you have to figure out how to keep your guys on the court. You have to figure out how to keep these guys' bodies healthy. And injuries are going to happen. But there's things that the team can do, and I often have wondered, and now we know, right, after getting a new regime in here, that the Bulls absolutely weren't doing enough to keep their players healthy. Shout out to Jeff Tanaka out at the Chicago Fire. So that's my biggest thing, my biggest gripe with this Bulls team, and the biggest question mark, right? The only thing that I have concerns about with them moving forward is if you're taking a risk on injury, not being there, is that too big of a risk to take going into next season? Because if they're all healthy, this Bulls team is a top 4 seed. Are they all going to be healthy? That's
the biggest question, right? And for people who's going to say, I already know people are going to comments, Lonzo, people use that 2-game season. People forget that was a 72-game season. He played in the last 2 seasons before the Chicago Bulls, he played in 85% of the games available. So, I mean, there has been, I won't lie and say there hasn't been some serious injury concerns over Lonzo's career, but hopefully he's going to come on the other side. We got to figure out what the heck. The fact that we still don't have a actual update on Lonzo's knee is bananas, bro. We're in July now. Training camp opens in September?
Bro, come on, we got Summer League is next week. Like basketball is getting back started in a month and a half, 2 months. You know what I mean?
This is wild. But Zach LaVine, again, people were saying Zach LaVine's knee. Zach LaVine's knee hasn't really been an issue since his first season in Chicago up until this season. He hasn't really dealt with
injury prone around way too easy.
People throw injury prone around if you had 2 injuries in your season. I mean, in your career, they're injury prone.
KD's injury prone now, and he's had like 6 injuries in his entire. How long has he been in the NBA?
KD is also more injury prone because he's played like a total of 81 games in like the last 3 years. But that's more understandable to throw that at KD than it is at Zach at this point in time.
He missed the year in the NBA Finals. Like he went out in the NBA Finals and it took him some time to get back. Like I can live with that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Injury prone gets thrown around way too easy for me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, bet you never, and that's the thing. If you can build depth, right? Me and you both talk about the Chicago Sky very heavily. The Chicago Sky are deep as heck. They can go 10 deep. and there's minimal drop off. If you can build depth, you do, because you never want to bet on 100% because it's a long season. It's not going to happen. But the thing is that hopefully when we do it, it's not 4 people having major injuries all in the same season.
Exactly.
That's the type of thing, right?
And the thing is, you don't want to go out and spend. Here's the thing. Say they are all healthy and we go out and spend major money on a big name guy. Say we spend the rest of our MLE on Dennis Schroeder because we feel like Lonzo Ball may not be healthy. And then Lonzo Ball is healthy the whole season. Now Dennis Schroeder's your backup point guard. I like that. Where's Io? Is Io your 2 now?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe Io's the 2. Where's Alex Caruso? Right, like now you have to kind of does Javonte Green. Like you don't want to pay guys to the point where guys are becoming the 15th man off of the bench.
Exactly.
And it's a good problem to have with depth, but also you still want to have depth along with development, along with winning, along with keeping people happy. That it's a lot to navigate there. And so that's always the thing that I look at. It's like, yeah, we could go out and pay this guy X amount of dollars to come into the Chicago Bulls, but are we actually going to have room to play this guy on the Chicago Bulls right now? Like when you look at the bench unit's not bad if they're the bench unit. Io, Kobe, Caruso, Javonte Green, Derrick Jones Jr., Andre Drummond, that's not a bad bench. Those are guys that are depth pieces that are going to be able to come in and eat minutes and still keep production up. It's a bad bench when those guys are in your starting lineup for 45 games of the NBA season. So that's the biggest part. But I will say it's one of those things, right, where I look at it and I say, I am concerned that we're putting a lot on guys being healthy when natural things just kind of pop up in the NBA. I don't think Zach will be down like he was because they got the knee issue cleaned up, but we don't know about Lonzo. We don't know what's going to happen with Caruso. Caruso's a grit and grime kind of player. He's going to get beaten up. He's going to get bounced around. He's going to get knocked over. It just so happened that Grayson Allen knocked him over even hard, a little extra.
Not a little. Yeah,
we
can't throw a little with that. It was a lot.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. A lot. Hey, we never did ask this question, right? Because this is one question that we had off free agency. This is a little off topic, but before we get out of here, does Andre Drummond solve any of our enforcer issues?
To a degree.
Andre Drummond, like, is Andre Drummond running up into the fray on a Grayson Allen?
Oh, Andre Drummond is getting in his face, and we ain't got to worry about Andre Drummond being picked up by Steven Adams either.
Andre Drummond is heavy, bro.
That's
now I will say,
listen, Steven Adams picks up Andre Drummond and walks away. They need to offer him a $50 million contract today.
Hey, no, he still might pick him up. I think legitimate. Didn't they? Now I asked this on the breeze. Didn't they legit run like some like nerd simulation or something like that where it was based on like the power that a player played with, and Steven Adams came up as like the strongest player in the NBA?
If that is, I didn't know.
I remember something about that, and they were talking about it, and Steven Adams was just like, oh, okay, man, I don't know. I lift weight and I eat. I love Steven Adams, bro. Hey, that's a player I'll go get. But yeah, no, I feel like the Bulls are like, I'm trying to keep my mindset that we're a good team if healthy, but that if healthy is like, should we have gone out and gotten somebody better? Should we have gone out and gotten somebody different? Or is it worth the risk?
I mean, the way that I look at it is that sometimes the sum of the parts are better than each part individually. So while we can sit here and talk about each part individually, we got to see how this team comes together, because it could come together in a way that we don't foresee, and we're 3 months from now looking at it like, oh, well, you know what? Yeah, this is working out pretty well for us right now. Yeah. So I've always said I'm taking the wait and see approach. I'm taking that. Like I've said it this on Central. I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not underwhelmed. Just whelmed at this point. Just whelmed.
That's not a bad team. It's not a bad thing. I'm just whelmed.
Just whelmed. And we'll see what happens.
What happens from?
Teen Titans.
Teen Titans. I said, nobody uses whelmed.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. He was like, is whelmed a word? Nobody just uses whelmed. And then the whole episode, I'm whelmed.
Yeah. Hey, bro. Hey, listen, you only getting this kind of content here, brother. Like, they're not getting this anywhere else, man. Oh, now you got a Teens Titans reference on the Teens Titans. That's a strike. I'll take it. You got a Teen Titan reference on Locked On Bulls, man. Shout out to y'all. There's some of our older listeners that are like, what
What is happening here?
Teenage Titans. What's going on with that?
Yeah. All right,
Let's
man.
get out of here, bro.
Yeah, let's get out of here, bro.
Follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. You can follow us both everywhere at Locked On Bulls. Appreciate y'all for showing so much love, man.
You can follow me at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Bulls your first listen of the day. Now, for your second listen, go and check on Locked On NBA, where the NBA experts break down all the latest news and rumors in the NBA in just under 30 minutes. They're available wherever you get your podcast. You can even find our very own Pat the Designer over there once a week with Nick. So make sure you guys check that out. But that is it for Locked On Bulls today. For Pat the Designer, I'm Haize, and we out this mug. Peace, y'all.
Peace.